Well, hey everyone, Wayne Fox here. I'm going to do a video today about this little Orico X50. I bought this a few months ago and was going to do a video, and I never got around to it. I decided to do the video. So at the beginning, I'm going to talk about this device, open it up, put in an SSD, but then I'm going to compare four. I'm going to compare this to the Acasis 501 Pro, the OWC 1M2 80 gigabit per second version, and the Terramaster, which I recently reviewed these others, and just side-by-side comparisons and how they really stack up. If you're thinking about building one of these, you might want to watch this. If you want to know more about the Orico, just stick around. We'll open it up, put the SSD in. If you're mainly interested in how they compare, I'll have timestamps below. You can skip ahead. So anyway, let's get this one open, get the SSD in, and then let's get these things tested. The box didn't make it through Amazon real well. Looks like it's plenty well padded though, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, yeah, it is nice and compact. It's got a solid aluminum bottom with lots of heat fins. Let's see what else comes in the box real quick. We do get a USB 4 version 2 cable. Notice that says 80 gigabits per second, so it's not a ThunderBolt 5 cable certified. I'm not sure why they didn't go ahead and include a ThunderBolt cable, but USB 4 version 2 cables work just fine with Thunderbolt. We get a typical screwdriver. We have a small screw here, typical heat pad. This looks like it's about 1 mil, and a little instruction book. Let's go ahead and open it up real quick. It's actually loose right now, which is interesting. One little screw right here in the bottom, we'll take that out. Looks like a pretty straightforward board. Notice there is a ThunderBolt logo on the board itself, which means, I assume that means they're using the Intel Thunderbolt controller, and there is a Thunderbolt logo on the back. So it has been certified by Intel. Let's go ahead and put an SSD in there. I've got this crucial P3 2 terabyte we'll put in there initially, just to kind of test it. We'll test it with the Samsung 990 Pro as well as the Western Digital Black when we get serious about it, but let's just see how well it works basically. About a 30-degree angle. This is the little screw that was in the case, and the screwdriver's right here. There we go. So let's go ahead and get that tightened up. I'm going to go ahead and put a thermal tape right here that's all ready to go. We're going to go ahead and put it down. And this is a little tiny screw. Let's hold it upside down. There we go. Well, I've been using it for a few months now. I actually bought this in January and it's May. So just didn't get around to finishing the video, but I've used it pretty extensively. Let's just real quick show some of the results of the tests and give you an idea where it compares. It really stacks up pretty much similar to all of these devices. You know, they all test pretty much the same. So it's going to be more about the feature set, you know, the form factor, for example. This is the smallest one of the ones I've tested. The ability to handle heat if we really are pushing it. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. This device will handle heat the least of all of them, but before you go, oh no, it's a problem, for most people it isn't. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, let's take a look real quick at Blackmagic and see how it stacks up. This is with the Samsung 990 Pro, and as you can see, we're getting around 6,300 write, 5,800 read. Very similar. These will all test nearly the same. The slight variations, but nothing significant. As I mentioned, really it's not the enclosure that's the critical part here. Just for curiosity, I wanted to run Amorphous, and using Amorphous you can see very similar results with all of them. The only anomaly is you'll notice that on the Acasis and the Terramaster, the two really low numbers there seems to be a problem running Amorphous on a MacBook Pro. Those were both run on a MacBook Pro, the M4 Max. The Amorphous, the Orico and the OWC were both run on a Mac Studio, and I don't get those weird numbers. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but the bottom line is I can see the performance really doesn't vary a whole lot. So great little device. Let's give it a stress test now though. So in this test, we're going to copy a 400 gigabyte file to the internal SSD of each of the devices. We're going to repeat it 4 times. We're going to make sure we get past the limit of the SSD cache, which really will stress it as much as we can. Now we're going to use this Western Digital 850X Black because it has about a 1.2 terabyte SLC cache with the 4 terabyte version once it's freshly formatted, and pushes it much further. And the Samsung 990 Pro has about a 600 gigabyte cache, and for practical purposes, that's all you need. But this will really stress it, and we can really tell how each device manages the heat. Like I said, we're going to do that 4 times, and we'll talk about it as we go. I'll speed this up quite a bit as we go along, but here, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm using a couple of programs. First, Activity Monitor gives us an idea of the transfer, and then another program gives us an idea of the SSD temperature as we go. Let's go ahead and get the first 400 gigabyte file transferred. Takes a little over a minute, and as you can see at this point, the Orico is running at 120 degrees, the OWC is running at 117 degrees, the Terramaster is running at 104 degrees, and the Acasis 501 is running at 113 degrees. All right, let's go ahead and move through the next 400 gigabytes. And here again, it took a little over 2 minutes. It took about the same amount of time. At this point, you can see that the Orico is up to 126 degrees, so it's getting a little warm. The OWC is 122. The Terramaster is still at 108, still pretty cool. And the Acasis is at about 118. All right, let's do one more 400 gigabyte transfer. And now you can see we've transferred 1.2 terabytes of data so far. It's taken us a little over 3 minutes. And you can see that the Orico is up to 131 degrees. The OWC is up to 126 degrees. The Terramaster is still only 111 degrees. And the Acasis is 124 degrees. Now I will mention that those sound hot and go, wow, the Terramaster is really winning. But none of those temperatures are extreme, well within the tolerance. For example, the SSDs in my Mac Studio, they're usually running at around 150 degrees. And SSDs, you want them to run hot. We'll get to that in a minute. I've got a section that talks about the heat and why all of these devices seem to do pretty good. Let's go ahead and transfer the last 400 gigabytes now. And as you can see, all of these have hit this SLC cache and we've slowed way down. And the last 400 gigabytes will take considerably longer because we're only getting about 1,600 to 1,500 megabytes a second versus 6,000. Let's go ahead and speed this up. So I'm running at 3,000% speed right now. It takes quite a bit to do this last bit because, again, we're working at pretty slow speed. But as you can see, they all finish within about 20 seconds of each other. Now, that speed difference is most likely due to what I have to do and the way I administer the test. Every 400 gigabytes, I have to drag and drop that file into a different folder or into the other hard drive. The process takes me a little bit of time. I also have to click a button that says keep both copies. And depending on the timing of that, I can take a little longer each time. Doing that 4 times could easily build up a several second difference. Again, the Acasis was also run quite a long time ago on a slower MacBook 4, M4 Max. And part of this depends on how fast the host computer can supply the data as well. So relatively speaking, they're nearly identical, maybe within 10 seconds if we really wanted to get picky. So just quickly summarize, they did get warm in that final phase. The Orico was up to 149, the OWC up to 144. The Terramaster stayed at 127, so it definitely runs the coolest. I don't think that's a big issue, except for a very select group of people. The Acasis was up to 142, and that fan did kick on at about 130 degrees. So most of that transfer, there was no fan, but that last little bit, it was trying to keep it cool. So if you really, really push these things, you can get the heat up there pretty far. Now, a lot of people think that's a problem. They think, man, that's warm. It can't be good for it. But electronics are designed to be warm, and SSDs are really designed to handle these kind of temperatures. I couldn't thermal throttle a Western Digital SSD with a case off, even all the way up to 180 degrees. It still performed these exact same speeds. The only throttling I ever hit was the SLC cache. And so I think it's kind of something that we really shouldn't worry about too much unless you're really, really hammering it. Yeah, maybe it'd be great to say, I've got the Terramaster because it's the coolest, and it is an awesome device. I will admit that it's a really well-designed device, and it might be just the perfect solution for you. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the NAND memory on these SSDs is designed to run hot. I read an article from Western Digital once. They say that typically they want temperatures 135 to 140. We're monitoring the temperature of the controller chip, not the NAND memory. And all of these SSDs have this thing on them that looks like a label, and most people wonder if they should tear it off. It's not a label. It's actually transfer tape. It's transferring the heat from the controller chip into the NAND memory and also into the heat tape. So it's using the NAND, So it's using NAND memory as sort of a heat sink to pull heat out of that controller chip. So I think all of these devices, for 95 to 98% of users out there, they'll all perform just fine. If you really are uncomfortable with the heat, that's fine. I think the SSDs, I've been running mine in an Acasis now for a couple of years, and I have no issues at all. So now we understand that these devices all pretty much perform the same, other than a little difference in the heat. And we understand that most people that doesn't apply. If you are one that does apply, then you probably know it. But what are the other factors that you might want to consider? Let me just list those out. First of all, we have compatibility. We've got form factor and how it looks. And finally, price. As far as compatibility, the Orico is the only one that isn't compatible with USB 3.2. They all are compatible with Thunderbolt 4, 3, 4, and 5. Not sure about Thunderbolt 3 on Windows, as well as USB 4 version 1 and USB 4 version 2. If you're in a situation where once in a while you've got to plug it into a device that's only USB 3.2, then the other three are the better choice. Other than that, the next thing you would want to consider is the form factor. Which one do you think looks the best? Which one, the size is better for you, fits whatever your workflow is? Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's just kind of compare them. Okay, I've got them all laid out. I put the Terramaster on its side because it gives us a better visual comparison on the size, even though when you use it, you operate it like this, and from the front, you're seeing it. So it's actually a nice form factor as far as using on your desk. The Acasis and the Orico are pretty much about the same size. I think the Acasis is slightly thicker, but pretty much identical. You'll notice we do have vents here because this one is fan cooled. Fan is thermally controlled in the 501 Pro, not in the 501, and it won't really trigger until it gets to about 135 degrees. So from what I've seen, if you're running it all day long, you can force it to be on by pushing a switch. But these two are really, really good if you're traveling a lot because they're going to be really nice to put in your bag. The OWC is about the same thickness as those, but of course it is considerably larger footprint. Might be an issue if you're trying to pack it in a bag. Still well designed. Heat fins do work quite well. And of course the Terramaster with its double heat fins here, I'm not sure how they're actually using those. I think what they might be doing is using one side to cool the actual board and the other side to cool the SSD. But as we saw from the test, this one seems to run the coolest, and the fact that it doesn't have a fan. Very, very beautiful device. It is bulky. It's a little big. It's heavier than the others. I should have weighed them, I guess. I'll maybe put the weights up there. I don't think there's a lot of difference. But to be honest, I think that these two would be great if you're mainly using it at your desk. If you travel a lot, you might want to consider the smaller form factors of these two. So the last consideration probably would be the price. These are the current prices. As you can see, the Orico with a coupon you can pick up for $173. Right now, the OWC is $174, so about the same price. These are all deeply discounted. The Acasis now is $174, and the Terramaster is the most expensive at $212. So all of them have dropped below the $200 mark now. They've come down quite a bit. I think they used to run in the $260, $270 range. And so if you're wanting to pick one up, keep your eye on Amazon because you might get a coupon. You can see the Acasis says it's a limited time deal. Well, I think that's a wrap. Now, you probably don't need a Thunderbolt 5 device. That extra speed really doesn't benefit that many people unless you're doing 8K video, high-end video, lots of 3D, high-end 3D rendering, large language models. But for most people using Photoshop, Lightroom, other kinds of programs, you're not going to gain anything from this this kind of speed. And even a Thunderbolt 4 device will serve you quite well. And they've gotten quite cheap now with the advent of Thunderbolt 5. So you might want to take a look at those. I've got videos on a lot of Thunderbolt 4 devices. I'll link some of those videos down below. I'll also link where you can buy these devices. I appreciate those that use the link. In the meantime, I've got another video I'm working on, which I think might be interesting, helping you decide which Thunderbolt 4/5 dock might be the best choice. And I'm doing one right now on SLC cache. This is something that I really don't understand still. Done a lot of research on it. It's beginning to make a little sense. And like I said, most channels that are talking about thermal throttling of SSDs, I think what they're really running into is SLC cache limitation, not thermal throttling. It's really hard to thermal throttle an SSD, as I've found. Anyway, I'll get to those hopefully the next month or two. In the meantime, thanks for watching. See ya.